Elegy, the armor of the Prophet Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you, and Allah's mercy and blessings. Dear friends, this story is not a relic of the past, but rather a testament to love from the 7th century, which has only reached our hearts today. An epic story that inspires to stay away from financial privilege in the world of leadership. There is an unusual logic behind the Prophet Muhammad's decision to pawn his armor to a Jew. He did not ask for help from his friends who loved the Prophet so much. This action is not just a practical choice, but a bold statement of independent glory, of honor that does not depend on mercy. The Prophet's friends will definitely help happily, without conditions, perhaps even without being asked. But that's precisely where the problem lies. The Prophet did not want to use his prophetic status as a tool to facilitate worldly affairs. He did not want his glory to become a burden for the people he loved so much. He wants to live as an ordinary human being who is responsible for his family's living needs. Pawning the armor in this way, the Prophet wanted to teach his people not to beg because it could lower their dignity. If the Prophet asked for help from his companions, there was a risk of debt of gratitude, which could unconsciously affect the relationship. Nobility lies in not taking advantage of one's position, no matter how small, for personal gain. So the Prophet chose to deal neutrally, in silence, with a Jew who did not love, who did not show compassion, who had no ties of faith and emotion. The Prophet ensured that there was no psychological or political burden in this transaction. Imagine a noble prophet, in the silence of Medina, walking alone, meeting Jews, pawning his armor, in exchange for 30 shah of wheat for his family's daily food. By pawning his armor, the Prophet separated who he was and what he deserved. The Prophet refused to make spiritual authority the currency of transactions. A harsh criticism of the culture of privilege which would later undermine almost all civilization on earth. This action of the Prophet seems to confirm a preference that the greater a person is, the more he distances himself from the conveniences offered by his own glory. Many leaders, even those who claim to be religious, use their influence to gain convenience, using their influence to strengthen their positions. But the Prophet did the opposite. He refused the facilities that came because of his status. What remains of the story of this armor is a big question. Are we, as his people, able to live with this standard of independence? When we ask for luxury under the pretext of religious struggle, or make religious robes, or robes of office as a tool to facilitate worldly affairs, then we are actually burying the meaning of this armor. The Prophet has exemplified an honor to be guarded and inherited. This armor and all the burden of meaning contained in it are now hung on our collective shoulders as the Prophet's people, not to be remembered, but to be emulated, because the story of this pawned armor is not really lost. It is still waiting to be worn, not as a tool to ask, but as a symbol of honor that cannot be bought. The armor is now a civilization mandate. Every time a representative of the people refuses to manipulate his position for a corruption project, every time a state civil servant refuses to sell his idealism for a high lifestyle, that's where the Prophet's armor is worn again. This is the prototype of good governance written in ink from the sky, as an exemplary story, today until tomorrow. Sholu ala Nabi. Note, if the price of 1 kilos of wheat is currently 120, then the Prophet pawned his armor for only 60, 30 shawls of 50 kilos. This is where the drops of water fall from these eyes. Forgive us, O Messenger of Allah, who still often fail to interpret your armor from our own compromise warehouses. We still hope for your wave of the hand at Lake Kautsar later.